Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I would like to focus on the food waste part of this bill. In preparation of this speech, I researched some information regarding food waste in Singapore, particularly at the NEA website. And like members who have spoke before me, I do find the food waste situation very worrying. Firstly, I was very disturbed to learn that the amount of food waste generated in Singapore has increased at an alarming rate of 40% per year over the last 10 years. And this is expected to increase further with our growing population, economic activities, and affluence. Despite earlier report to promote conservation of food, food waste is still mounting year by year. The second worrying fact is that only 17% of the food waste that we generate gets to be recycled. In other words, the main bulk of our unconsumed food ends up mostly in our usual rubbish trash and eventually sent for incineration. Whether from the food resource optimization or from public health standpoint, the current state of affairs on food waste is not sustainable. We are not doing justice to our precious food source. I'm glad that the government is making policy moves now to reduce and manage food waste. In my view, the key contributing factor to this situation is firstly the lack of awareness to prevent and reduce food waste at its source, and secondly, the lack of food waste treatment infrastructure in Singapore. So let me touch on the second point first, which is primarily addressed by this bill, that is to require mandatory food waste segregation by large food waste generators. The approach is to initially target commercial and industrial buildings that generate large amounts of food waste, such as large hotels, malls, as well as industrial facilities that house food manufacturer and caterer. I agree with this approach as a start, essentially focusing on the big food waste generators where it can move needle in terms of food waste recycling. The industry needs to comply with this new requirement by 2024. While I support these new measures, I would also like to ask the Minister how difficult would it be for the businesses to implement these regulations, and are the costs likely to be very high to the businesses? Can I also ask if there are already existing premises that adopt food segregation practices on-site, and what are the results and benefits so far? For example, how successful have we been to recover energy from food waste? Beyond expanding the practice to the industrial and commercial spaces, does the government intend to expand the practice of recycling food to residential areas as well? Back to my first point with regards to the lack of awareness in the area of prevention and reduction of food waste. I strongly believe that more can be done. I read in some study that on average, about 1/3 of all the food produced for human consumption is not consumed, but actually wasted. This is not only a waste of money for businesses and consumers, it's also costing the earth and worsening global warming. When food is wasted, even more food is needed to be produced to meet the demand, and consequently, the resources used to cultivate, to deliver, to distribute the food will also go to waste. Every one of us contributed to this wastage in some way. The food producer, the food businesses, as well as us, all of us individually, the consumer. Hence, an all-stakeholder coordinated approach at every stages of the food cycle are needed to make a significant difference. I support the NEA three-pronged strategy to reduce food waste. That is, firstly, to prevent and reduce food wastage at its source. Secondly, to redistribute unsold and excess food. And thirdly, to recycle and treat food waste. Whilst today's bill would in large way address the food waste recycling and treatment issue, more can be done in the area of prevention and reduction of food waste. And I hope that the government can take a more instrumental role here, play a more instrumental role here, and continue to look at more game-changing policy measures to reduce food waste, working closely with the industries and community stakeholders. We have read about the many ways and ideas how we could reduce food waste. I'm sure we will continue to come up with and discover more new ways. For example, with the advent of technology and data, we should leverage on more digital means to better match the supply and production of food with the demand and consumption of food. Often there are overproduction of food due to misreading or misjudging of consumers' demand. If there are more digital channels to place order for food, mobile apps to plan our meals, and so on, businesses and producers will be able to better right-size their production and reduce food wastage. And hopefully this could lead to cost reduction and possibly benefiting consumers when there's sufficient competition. So the foremost priority here hence must be to minimize the food produced that are not consumed. If we can reduce food waste as a major thrust of our efforts, it is half the battle won. The other half of the battle would be to look at how we can reuse and recycle the food where possible. Cutting food waste requires both systems and regulatory changes, as well as lifestyle and cultural changes. For example, mooncakes was just mentioned by members. We tend to give and receive multiple boxes of mooncake from each other. It's really a waste in in most cases. And also the 10-course dinner that we have. Do we really need 8 or 10-course dinner? It often will lead to more food waste as well as overconsumption, both undesirable. Earlier in the year, I read in the news about this year-long drive as part of the Towards Zero Waste campaign, where consumers are encouraged at food outlets to firstly order what we eat, secondly ask for less rice or noodle if unable to eat that much, and thirdly to say no to side dishes that we will not consume. While I applaud this worthy initiative, I have not seen this message reaching out to enough people. Many people that I saw at the food center continue to not practice the 3 suggestions mentioned. There has been actually no noticeable impact in my view. I urge the government to do more and to step up the campaign so that more people are conscious of this effort that we should do our part to reduce waste. So with that, I add my support to the bill.